Hi, everybody. JB back again. This is episode 14 in my Did You Ever Wonder local history video series. Today is about Fayetteville first. And just like on the last one I did on the why is it named that, uh, there could be a million firsts here. So I've just chosen a few. Anyway, on this title slide here, you can see this is purported to be the first automobile taxi in town. The gentleman sitting down at the steering wheel is Alexander Cruz. He was the police chief off and on in the latter part of the 19th and early 20th century, whenever Toy Gregg was not the chief of police. Mr. Cruz was, and the man standing beside him is Bob Atha, who was supposed to have the first automobile taxi service. Bob Atha had wagons, horse-drawn ones before that. This is the first automobile. And I tried to look this up. I believe this is a 1910 Model T Ford. It's an incredible car, isn't it? Anyway, so I just wanted to give you that. That's supposed to be the first taxi, automobile taxi. And we can get it to move to the next screen. Okay, there we go. A little sorry about the technical difficulties. Okay, so the first people here, of course, were native people, Native Americans, indigenous people, bluff dwellers, Quapaw, Osage, Choctaw, Delaware. The Cherokee old settlers came in the 1810s. And this, okay, I've been doing these for a while now, and I really need to make what I call the speech, which is, I think, a legitimate thing at this stage to do. Let me read this to you. This is a good place for me to take a moment to honor and respect those from our past who have been ignored or forgotten. First, I want to acknowledge the people here before us, the bluff dwellers, the Quapaw, the Choctaw, the Delaware, the Cherokee known as the old settlers, and the great Osage Nation. I also want to acknowledge the countless enslaved people who worked without freedom, without the hope of a future, to build our city, county, state, and nation. And I want to acknowledge the countless forgotten farmers, laborers, and others who toiled in near total obscurity in our dim past. We owe all of these people a debt of gratitude and appreciation. For all they did, I respect and honor them. Okay, so supposedly, and I sometimes think this may be an apocryphal story, but nonetheless, it's a good story. The first Anglo-European visitors supposedly came here in 1819, came up the White River, a man by the name of Frank Pierce, and you'll notice at the bottom, he's not the Franklin Pierce, the 14th president of the United States, but his name was Frank Pierce, and he came, this is right down by the caretaker's place at pump station down at the White River. It could look just like it did then. Anyway, Mr. Pierce supposedly came in off of the river and was aiming down on a buffalo to get some food. And he looked up and he saw an Osage hunting party. And being a smart guy, he said, maybe I won't crank off this round. Be a good idea not to annoy the Osage. And so he hid out. And anyway, he was supposed to be the first guy here. And I just put a picture in there of the pump station caretaker's home because that's such a cool house. Look at it. So grown there, looks like kudzu or whatever is taking it over. Okay, so that was the first Anglo-European European settlers in Fayetteville itself were the McGar families, and shortly after them, the Leapers. And the McGars were, the father was George, sometimes listed as James. He had sons William, James, and John, who was called Captain Jack. And William McGar had a grocery, which is where they sold alcohol, where Continuing Ed is today up on the northeast corner of the square. And Matthew Leaper came here with a job from Andrew Jackson, and his daddy, his father, James Leaper, was a Revolutionary War veteran, and he's buried out there on Pump Station Road. I think I've mentioned him in other ones, maybe even shown the grave and stuff in other videos. Another first was the first steam mill, and this was from the 1850s, owned by Joseph L. Dixon of Dixon Street fame and J.H. Sturman. It's at Mill on Huntsville Road. That's East Mountain in the background there. And they call that, anyway, the first one burned during the Civil War, like so much of the town was. It was burned down and it was rebuilt in the post-war. And it was known after then as the White Mill because the building was white. There was a red mill down towards Greenland, as I recall. Anyway, it burned down in 1922, this one here, and unfortunately. But today, so you get a little orientation down there on Mill as it turns into Huntsville Road, that motorcycle shop sits right exactly where the White Mill sat. Okay, first college in town, full-blown college, was Arkansas College, which I talked a little bit in the last episode. Again, as I said before in the other episode, it was formed in 1850 and lasted until 1861. The Civil War brought it to an end, and it was burned down to the ground on March 4th, 1862, when the Confederates set fire to most of the town. It was founded, Arkansas College was founded by the Reverend Robert Graham there. And it's, as I mentioned also before, it was located where the First Christian Church is. Along here would be Dixon Street and College Avenue. Over here is Dixon Street. That's headquarters house there in the very corner. The Baxter home, which really was the Graham home first, it became known as the Baxter House. Here's the school itself, and this little building over here was the library. Now, Cane Hill, as you probably know, Cane Hill out of college quite a few years before this one. And they were both degree conferring, but the Arkansas College beat Cane Hill by 1 day in getting that degree conferring certificate. So anyway, and I always sometimes forget to remember to say that the artwork is by William Cushenberry, known as Bill Cush. Without his stylized drawings of Arkansas College and Sophia Sawyer Seminary, we wouldn't have any idea what they look like at all. Okay, so the next thing is the first train. I could not find a picture of the actual first train, so it's not this one, but that's a real old picture of the trains coming through. Anyway, the first train that ever arrived in Fayetteville was June 8, 1881, the St. Louis and San Francisco Railway, known as the Frisco Line. And the regular service began in July 4th, 1882. At that June 8th, 1881 thing, there was said to be 10,000 people showed up to watch that train come in, which was vastly more people than lived here, practically the entire county. So anyway, the first Frisco train was July 4th, 1882. The first airplane flight occurred in 1911 out at the old Washington County Fairgrounds at Razorback Road and MLK. And yeah, if you remember, that's back in the old days. That's where when I was a kid, that's where the fairgrounds were. Anyway, it was one of the aviation pioneers, Glenn Martin, was a pilot, and that's a picture of him flying. He took off, headed south, and made a big loop-de-loop around town and came in and landed. And he was flying this, they were called a pusher biplane because the propellers were facing backwards, pushing the plane, if you will. The pusher biplane, and with the propellers facing the rear, and it was a 15-minute flight. But again, it was hugely attended in a big whoop-de-doo. And as cool as could be. Okay, and then I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it. It may stretch my little talk here a little longer. But I wanted to talk about the first legal liquor licenses after Prohibition, because I find it amusing. In 1935, I think Prohibition was lifted in 33, as I recall. Anyway, in 35, Jack Holt got the liquor license for his Holt liquor store. Remember, his brother was the boxer, Trigger Holt. I talked about him earlier in an episode. And anyway, so Jack got the first one. The Crescent Drugstore got the second one. And then Dick Hudson got the third one. The reason I wanted to include this is Dick Hudson is my oldest brother's first father-in-law. And he was quite a character. He had a liquor store off of the square, just down from the Washington Hotel on West Mountain, just off the square, before you got to the admin building. Anyway, and here's an ad for Dick Hudson's liquor store there. You can see it's half block west of Washington Hotel. But I always got a kick out of getting the first three liquor licenses. Dick Hudson was one of them. And that kind of a really fast summary, because like I said, there's a zillion of them we could do. The first car, first automobile in town, first paved roads, electricity, water, just there's a million first. I wanted to just do a few of these here. today for this episode, just an introductory. It'll probably run long anyway. I'm hoping not too much, so I better shut up and get off this time. Thanks again for watching. Appreciate it. Hope you enjoy some of this. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.